Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and tie master Anne-Marie Young. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Oh, and Happy New Year, too. I mean, we are recording this on January 1st, 2024, and now I have to start getting used to writing 2024 instead of 2023. I mean, the good news is that we don't do checks anymore, so I don't have to worry about getting the date wrong on the checks, you know. But still, that means there's fewer opportunities to actually write the year, so now I have to really focus for a little bit. But by the end of January, I'll have it down pat. No big deal.
That's so
but
true.
Anne-Marie, we're joined. Well, first of all, Anne-Marie, hello. I mean, we haven't talked in a couple weeks, and you've been through quite the holiday, but I'm glad to see you're coming out the other side feeling much better than you were. So welcome back.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Thank you.
You've been through it, right?
Yeah, I had COVID just before Christmas, but we didn't dampen the celebrations. Christmas, I was okay. Cooked a good Christmas dinner and had fun with the family. So yeah.
Not easy to do either. I mean, it's getting easier and easier with each new variant because they get weaker and weaker, but still it's a thing to go through. So congratulations for getting through it as quickly as you have.
Thank you. Yeah. Still knocked you for 6, but I survived.
No, that's all right. Well, you know, we'll expect exactly what we always expect, whatever comes. I mean, it's just that simple, very straightforward.
Absolutely.
And we're joined today by Kimberly Braun, who is a 3-time author now, author of her latest book, Miracles in the Naked Light. I'm trying to figure out what clothed light is. I haven't quite figured that part out, but maybe she'll clue us in on that. Well, Kimberly, welcome to the program. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and it's great to be with you on this New Year's Day. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you. So, okay, gotta go right to that first question. What makes light naked? I mean, I didn't know it was a dress code.
No, really? Isn't that great? So when I was taking a hike, I live in Colorado, and I love hiking. It's really my place to truly be. And I was reflecting on my book. I was in the editing process. And as I was singing to music on my iPhone and reflecting, I started singing to the song Sounds of Silence. And this phrase, and in the naked light I saw.
Oh, yes, of course.
And I was like, oh, that's what it's about. Because my book, one of the foundational messages that comes through the experience of reading it is how everything is grace, and how that's a revelation that I continue in my own life to open up, even though it's like right here, right before my eyes. New light awakens me more and more through my path to see it. So it's like standing here right naked. It's right here. It's all around. It's present, and it's my growing presence to it. And then second was a Kabir poem that I love. I love that poet, and he has, it's the oil that burns. And then he says, I was standing naked in the marketplace and nobody saw me. He was so on fire with love for God. And in that experience, he found that he was less seen rather than more seen. So that's my play with the word and what it means. Or phrase.
Yeah. Well, I can see why you'd want to play with that too. That is kind of cool. So have you found that when you're in that naked light, that you have that same experience, that fewer people see you?
It varies, right? I think that in one way, when we're truly present, we connect on a soul level with everyone around us. And on another level, we as human beings tend to interface with our reality in as much as we are available to it. Makes sense. It's kind of a paradox situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So I think we're kind of getting an idea of the book, but why don't you give us a closer look? Give us a lay of the land. What's the book really all about?
I love that. Thank you. So it is a second in a trilogy, and it's drawing upon one event in my life during a time that I was a Carmelite monastic nun, which I was for 10.5 years.
Wow.
And it draws upon a period from my 6th year to about the 8th year, when I had a deep yearning for more solitude. And the response that I heard from the universe or source was build the permanent monastery. And I think we can all relate that when we have a really big inspiration, something really jazzes us or moves us, we tend to give a big yes to it. but we usually don't know what we're saying yes to. And that's what happened there was that I'm like, yes, but I had no idea that meant literally I was going to be the 29-year-old Carmelite nun general contractor, principal spokesperson, pioneer, fundraiser, because Spirit just moved me, and the community arose in that and brought their gifts forward. So it lays out that journey as a model for what I think is universally true for all of us. And that is that we are just tipping our toe in the water on the potential that lies at our core. And part of the realization of that is our greatest fulfillment and is fully possible. It's easier than what we think.
Okay, that always sounds better whenever it's easier. That always sounds a whole lot better. I mean, it makes it sound like it's reachable, achievable. You know, I can do that one. Okay. The ones that are too far away, forget. I can't do those. The ones that are close, yeah, I can do those.
Yes.
But you also mentioned that the community kind of arose. Talk about that part of it.
It was phenomenal. So what ended up happening is when I gave that yes, I didn't tell my own religious community. I just kind of sat in the juice of it. And synchronistically, that topic got put on our meeting agenda for the following week.
Oh my.
And up to that point, the community had never discussed it. So that was a sign to me. And then we voted a yes. And then after that, unsolicited by us, we hadn't even really talked about it or formulated any kind of plan. A month later, a couple, Pierce and Dean of Holt, and they're named accurately in the book. Most of the names are changed, but they said yes to being in the book. They walked up to our door and offered us 640 acres for free.
Whoa.
And they said, "Feel inspired to help you build your permanent monastery." And we've got, I think they had 6 or 7 plots of land. They let us choose which one we wanted. Wow. And right from the start, because we had very little money, right from the start, that kind of occurrence was happening daily. And then what happened that led me to be at the lead of the project, again, unsolicited, was that for some reason, every time I spoke about it, people were touched and they just became excited and they were giving left and right. We had big gifts like the copper standing seam roof and, 180,000 pounds of granite. But we also had day after day, miraculous small gifts, like a subcontractor, like a drywaller or a painter or a plumber say, "You know what? I've got 3 days free next week. What can I come out and do?"
Wow.
And so the monastery was truly built in the flow of all of this generous gift of self.
Wow, that's pretty exciting. Now, you said you did that for, 10.5 years, something like that?
I was in Carmelite for that long, yeah.
Right, which suggests that you're no longer doing that. Is the project still going? Is the monastery still going?
So it was dedicated February 3rd of 2001, and I had received the inspiration that my next step in life was to leave, which I was in solemn vows, and that's a massive story, because I never looked back. I loved being Carmelite. But, in August of the prior year, I had received the inspiration that my next step was going to be to leave. So I finished the project. We dedicated it. I left on June 9th of that year, and it was a fully functioning monastery. There were little things that were undone, such as like the landscaping and just little things like that. But it was fully functioning, 17,000 square feet of air-conditioned space. Wow. And then we had lots of breezeways. I took advantage of mission-style architecture and the way it would work with harmony with the land. And we ended debt-free. It was worth probably about $9 million. Ended debt-free in 2.5 years. Is that like not a miracle?
Yeah, right.
That certainly is.
Yeah. And it's beautiful. But when I left, I was not really welcome to stay in touch because I was leaving my vows. And it was perceived that I was losing my way, not stepping forward in the next step with Spirit. So my connection's been very light, but I am aware that they are there, that there are some nuns in the community. I don't know how many. And I didn't ring the doorbell, so I didn't talk with any of them, but I visited back in 2019. And so this is 19 years later. And I wept. I mean, I just leaned against the stone walls. It looks like we had built it yesterday.
Really?
And since I knew everything, because we created the whole underground, I knew every smidgen of the project. I just wept because it was so much of my soul there. And it looks like it was built yesterday. It was just crazy. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. and yet you were led to move on to the next step. What was the next step?
Yes. Well, it's interesting because it wasn't clear when I took the step. And I think that's another way that we find part of our path is sometimes we're drawn on, but we're not given all the clear direction. So what happened for me?
That's the truth. That's my life in a nutshell right there.
right. So relatable. Clear as day, my next step was to leave. And then what happened was not through a lot of conscious deliberation, but a bit motivated. I'm like, you know what? If I did my seminary training and my grad work, it would be a way of stepping from one dramatic lifestyle into something where it would be a little bit of a held container. You know, I wouldn't be out there I had been out of society for really 15 years. You know, no radio, no computer, no TV. And so I didn't really know what I was stepping back into. And I got a scholarship to attend the Washington Theological Union in DC.
Wow.
So I went there and completed that. And my study was really the nature of psychospiritual development because I wanted to learn how to be a friend to others. You know, I've had my mystical experiences and they continue to transform me and I continue to grow in love. But how does everybody else speak about their life and their experience? So a lot of my training was with that. And then after that, since then, I've been leading retreats and offering inspirational talks. And now I have some online courses and I just continue to be a friend to people on their own journey.
So tell us what kinds of experience and friendships have you developed during that part of the journey? Because I mean, to me, that's the best part. That's what I do here on the program. That's how Anne-Marie came into it. You know, just this whole thing of encountering new people, getting to know them, making them into friends and so forth is, I think, probably the greatest gift or experience or however you want to call it that we have in our lives. We get to connect with all these other beings. That's why I like that part of the story the best.
And I love then that you're hosting a podcast. Right? Yes. And you know, I'm similar. And one of the things that I've experienced most of my life, but was definitely amplified in my monastic period was the immediate experience of presence in all. And when I left the monastery, that didn't change. So my way of being the past 23 years now, I left in 2001, so 23 years now, is so intimate and so vulnerable. And I would say it runs the gamut. You know, I've served more than 100,000 people. You know, I've been blessed to be in so many varieties of groups. Anything from churches to centers to private groups to big international retreat centers. Like I taught at Omega for 7 years, and that really broadened my sense of connection in the world much more. And so I would say for me, it's way more of a sophisticated quilt work of colleagues doing what I'm doing in a variety of different traditions and ways, because I'm not lineage based. I went fully non-lineage based back in 2007. And that was because I was on ministry staff at a church for a bit. It was a very progressive Catholic church. Can you believe it? And the two priests.
Those words don't usually go up in the same sentence at the same time, do they? Progressive, Catholic, yeah.
Oh my gosh. They esteemed me, the two priests that were there, esteemed me as a minister with them.
Wow.
I was on the altar. I participated deeply with the gifts that are mine. But it was clear that my service was meant to not be lineage based. So I began to stretch out into new environments locally to start with. As most things happen, right? A little small step.
Right.
I was here, and then I just started doing that there. I became a core meditation teacher at a very thriving yoga studio that was a very solid, rich base. There was like 500 active yoginis practicing upwards of 3 times a week. So very deep community. So as I began to develop the languaging for being of service to all backgrounds, I was doing both. And then at a certain point, about 1.5 years into that, both were thriving and beautiful, so beautiful. And then in that area, the leadership changed on the bishop level, on the cardinal level. And the new bishop that came in banned me. So the doors were all shut, and I lost 80% of my income. I lost all of that service that was so life-giving because I had moved out of one church ministry and I was serving them all. It was so beautiful because it was the mystic Christianity that I was at the service of. And when that happened, then that door closing, then of course put me in a position to open 100% to see where my path was meant to be solid. And it continues to unfold like a pathless path. I continue to be deconstructed and called beyond my knowing and trusting, being strategic and solid as a professional, but trusting in that process to all of the unknowns that are going to arise, not just in the big picture, but in the small picture. So
that's an interesting phrase, the pathless path. Where does that come from?
Isn't that great? I made it up. It probably comes from somewhere. It's like,
Well, what's the inspiration? There's got to be an inspiration behind that.
It's true. So what's really funny is I was attending something local here about 6 or 7 years ago. And it was a big group. It was like 30 people. And we were all invited to give a 2-sentence descriptor of our spirituality. And I tend to be put in a lot of boxes, having been a former Carmelite and I'm a ordained minister, and people tend to get all these ideas of what I am and what I'm not. And when I was sitting there before we shared, I thought, wow, can I speak about it? And I'm like, well, holy shamoly, it is such a pathless path. It is a path that gains greater certainty through the undoing of the structures that only go so far for ourselves. And therefore, it's not Zen Buddhism. It's not Catholic. It's not Tantra per se. It's not, but rather there's an experience on an essence level of a nonverbal grasping of this agency within ourselves and being at the ascent of that, which makes it like when I'm walking the path, I don't see this like, whoop, there I'm going up the mountain. Nope, now I'm going down the mountain. There's a great poem by John of the Cross, a Spanish mystic, who says, that flame guided me, the flame at the center of his heart, more certainly than the noonday sun that might shine a light on it.
Beautiful.
Wow. Okay.
I love throwing these bombs on it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Anne-Marie, she's clearly a dangerous person, right? She insists on living outside the box. That's going to threaten any society.
Oh my days, yeah. That's not what you're supposed to be thinking.
Right. Oh,
course, on the other hand, I guess we could say that all the best living happens outside the box. So there is that.
Right. There is something very dynamic about being more and more intimate with ourselves and life. And that never has a static pattern to it. Yeah.
But I think it just sounds beautiful, your whole story, and it just your whole trust that it's going to work out and that everything's happening for you. And it's just a wonderful way of learning and living.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Thank you. I really appreciate that reflection.
Where do you think that trust comes from? Because she's right. And that really is, in my experience, that's the one hurdle that's the highest hurdle for people to overcome, the trust hurdle. And yet you seem to have cleared it with ease. It has not been a big deal for you. How do you pull that off when the rest of us go, oh my God?
Right. Well, I would say that when we experience the ineffable, there is something within us that shifts. And the more we open to that experience, the more we shift into a certain solid connection with being. And I say solid in like tongue in cheek, really.
Yeah.
And I think for me, what has really been foundational, and that's why I'm so much at the service of this in humanity, is when I was little, I was having a lot of unitive experiences. And I thought everybody was having the same experiences like most children do. And I think most children are having a lot of pretty amazing experiences. But what was happening in these is I was going through my life as like a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. And time would stop. And you talk about being happy. This experience of the deeper reality of life would happen spontaneously. It wasn't like I was seeking it in my mind or praying for it, or it would just arise from within me. And then part of the fruit that I think was very stabilizing was it made me very happy. And as a little child, we like to be happy. And I was so intellectually curious. I was like, oh my gosh, this makes me really happy. And so then it lent me to value that more without me consciously doing it. I was like, it's like if you eat a kind of ice cream that you love, you're going to tend, when you look at the different choices of ice cream, go, I know I really like the chocolate chip with the walnuts in it, because something in you kind of already feels that happiness before you even eat a bite of the ice cream. And that's a bit how it was for me as a child, was that I was getting all of these tastes of these deeper parts of being alive. And back then I would have said union with God. And I think there's truth there if I take God out of its traditional definition, because it certainly evolved for me. But having that happen when I was little, and that being the place where I gained understanding, because like many, I had some very traumatic events happen, some deep losses that I carried deep within, but they gave understanding and context to the deeper existential things that are there for us all. So I think having that happen when I was little formed my mind and my heart and my cells in a way that was a practice without a practice of, well, this is what I like. Well, this is all life is about. Well, and I've always experienced all my life that even in moments of great, tremendous destruction, because I've had, like when I was banned, that was a big destruction thing. It was rejection of a place that I called home, right? Of a tradition that was valuable for me. It was a loss of all my survival needs. And it was a rejection of me, like me personally, me as a woman and me as a spiritual leader. It was a direct saying, you're not sound. Like it hit every part. So even in moments of destruction like that, for some reason, I have this direct experience of being held by Source. And I would call it beloved. That's my language, but that's not his language. And I couldn't have sought that. I don't know why that happens for me, but I do believe it's a gift that allows me to be at the service of others in these challenging lives that we're given.
You used a couple of terms there I need to ask you about. One in particular, you referred to yourself in the plural. You said myselves. Talk about that. What did you mean by that?
Can you say again how I said it? And then
you said myselves.
Can you go back?
I don't even remember what exactly you were just talking about your experience, and you used the word myselves rather than myself. And I thought, whoa, okay, I got to ask what that's all about, because that's the first time I've heard that.
Oh, you know what? I probably made a mistake. I was probably like,
oh, okay. Well, I'm suspecting a mistake. I'm suspecting there's something beneath you, maybe something you haven't even explored before. But I get the feeling there's something to that. I don't think it was just a random slip of the tongue.
Right.
Does it resonate in any way? Because that's the other thing I wanted to ask you about. Because what you were describing to me sounded like what I would call resonance. Everything that you described about how, all these experiences and feelings and how you interpret them and so forth. You described how it just, I don't know what your wording was, but how it just really, in my words, resonated within you. It was a strong resonance to all of this.
100%. It was all resonant, right? And I would say, and I hold my beliefs and my truths lightly, so I encourage others to not just swallow them. But I would say that there is a pulse of divinity, which is how we live. It's that in which we live and move and have our being. It is our center point, but it doesn't have a center. It is and therefore, when there is resonance on that level, there's a natural inclination towards it or into it or opening up in it. And I think resonance is what it's about. And that's what happened in those early childhood experiences. I had this experience, a belief that still continues this day to be a foundational worldview. It's never fallen away as untrue. Like, that's pretty dynamic, right? Yeah. It's still life-giving, 51 years later.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially to get it that young and have it as I don't want to say governing force or driving force, a stabilizing force. I think that's where I'm thinking of. It's a stabilizing force in your life. It provides a level of stability in your own mind and your own experience that I think enables you to do things like have enormous levels of trust and to have these wonderful, miraculous things happen because you feel that internal stability.
Yeah. I love the way you put that. Yeah, that's well said. Yeah.
That kind of takes all the wording out of her mouth, doesn't it? I just kind of basically reframed all of her stuff for her.
I love it. Well, I'm a poet as well. And so I tend to use a lot of descriptors because we're talking about things that can seem very elusive. And I think descriptors can sometimes create a resonance that lets us tap into where we stand with things and what our truth is and what we're called into to be.
What are some of the things that are resonating for you, Anne-Marie, as you're listening to all of this?
I just find it staggering that as a child, you figured out and learned something that many of us adults are still trying to master ourselves. And what a beautiful gift that was.
Thank you. Who knows why everybody's path is so diverse, right? Why certain things happen a certain way. My own sense, and this falls within the school of non-dual Shaiva Tantra from the 1200s, that I really, really love the way they talk about reality and consciousness, is that we're all consciousness coming into form. And consciousness seeks to celebrate itself, which we would call being awake or the awakening process. And that anything that is not that isn't bad. It's simply ignorance. It's simply a not knowing, yet. And I think then that shines a wonderful, compassionate, non-judgmental light on the mystery of each of our paths. Why why certain graces seem to hit us at one point and not another, and why this person has that experience. It's, I think, because we're just a sea of wildflowers that are intended to give off different fragrances at different times, and therefore the conditions that are necessary for that are the ones that consciousness is allowing. Yeah.
I'm drawn back to your title for a moment, Miracles in the Naked Light, your second book out of 3, and particularly the phrase naked light, which we were talking about before. What do you think makes the light naked?
So when I'm playing with that phrase, at least what I'm talking about, because I like it if people kind of find their own interpretation too. But what I'm talking about is there is an all-pervading, lit up source or consciousness that form is at all times without any hiddenness or barriers or cloaked nature to it. And that when we talk about something being hidden from our eyes, it's more that we're still hidden from it, not that it's hidden from us. And the quality of naked to me is so perfect because it's ultimate vulnerability. You know, it's ultimate intimacy. And what's more intimate than being completely naked?
Okay, I'd say that answers it pretty clearly, pretty concisely. It's not as direct as you're going to get. I like that. Yeah. So you've been on this really interesting journey. You've had a number of different stops along the way, and it seems to be one that's continuing to unfold. What's going on right now, though? I mean, you've got the book out, but what else is going? Because there's something that's kind of tapping me on the shoulder and saying, you're missing a piece of the story here. There's a piece that's going on, and I don't know what it is.
Well, I just perhaps personally disclosing, I'm coming through a time of another period of loss. The lockdown was a loss. You know, I was traveling 8 months out of the year of service to everything we're talking about. And that was whoosh, 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023 was tenuous because people are still very afraid to book, I get booked to do things. So, just on a very practical level, there's been a lot of, and I lost my best friend, Joyce, and there was a lot of loss in these past years. But something has been moving within me with a niggling that something big is about to happen that I'm going to be at the service of.
Ooh.
And I don't even know what it is. So if it's knocking you on the shoulder, it's like it's stirring within me. And I'm simply stepping forward back into leading retreats, and I've got an online summit this coming weekend, and really working to open things in the online world and book in person again. As I reemerge, there's something that the world has changed, that I've changed in ways that I'm not even certain what that means. And something's going to happen. Something very life-giving, very beautiful, but I don't know what it is. And, big, you could say like the building of the monastery was a big thing, because it was.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Huge.
And I think it's going to be all consuming like that, but I don't know if it means big where outwardly it will look big, or if it will be something that outwardly looks small, but something is, I'm right on the precipice of something. So in a way, I'm walking forward knowing this is going to happen, but I have no idea.
That's an interesting awareness.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you? Yeah. Anne-Marie, you can perhaps you can relate. There are some key qualities that I feel like I'm being urged to draw very close to. And one of them is childlike curiosity. And think about, because our world is always full of a lot of stressors.
Mm.
Yes.
And presently there's a heightened, I won't say it's unique, because I think humanity's been through a lot of cycles that we're repeating still another one, of fear-based cycle.
Very
But
much.
certainly human beings are talking like in a way that is trying to find a way. And that it seems like there's even more divisions and more polarizations and more uncertainty and more. So in the heat of that, to be called to draw close to childlike curiosity could feel maybe a little irresponsible, you know?
I don't think so. I don't think so. The beauty of children and their innocence and their knowing and their trust and their love. I mean, kids have it right. It's as you grow up and you get fed all this stuff that life changes and life gets less fun. Childlike's beautiful. So I love that. And I kind of feel the same as you in some things changing. I think people are being dragged down by that fear. And people are just like, I can't take this anymore. I need something else. And they're looking for avenues to bring the joy back into their lives. So I think, that whole awakening thing, I think that's very prominent at the moment. And I could see you being a massive part of that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Certainly the idea of it resonates. We can tell just from the smile on your face.
Yes. Yeah, definitely so. Definitely.
That's fun. That's really fun. You have a lot of fun in life.
Oh, thank you. Well, life feels fairly simple. I would say that I'm not 100% simple yet. I'm still on that path of growing to have that as my leading quality, but it's largely there. It's largely there. Mm-hmm. And simplicity really opens us up to a field of intelligence that would amaze us. Like we talk about, great thought contributors in the world, people like Einstein and Tesla and Madame Curie and, people that so many that knew they were bringing forward something that hadn't yet been brought forward, and yet it was already there. They had a feeling it's already there. It's already there. And I think that's what we're all called to. And the more simple we are, the more available we are to it and it is to us. And I love living that way. Yeah.
Well, you're open apparently to whatever's coming. I mean, just the way you described whatever this thing is that's coming around the corner. You didn't describe it in fearful terms. It wasn't a question of, oh, geez, I don't know what's coming. It wasn't like that. It was, oh, wow, something's coming. It was that kind of a vibe.
It feels that way. It feels that way. It might be some kind of Lord of the Rings, like where I'm like, oh yes, I'll take the ring.
Well, maybe you're going to create the next real world Fellowship of the Ring. I mean, maybe that's what you're on a quest here. Who knows?
That's a really fun way to look at it. I love that.
Just be careful of the orcs. That's all I got to say. The orcs will kill you every time.
No, they are so scary. I watch those kinds of movies a lot, and they are really scary.
Look for the elves. The elves will be helpful.
I have the feeling she'll only attract the elves, the nice.
I think so too. Yes.
Yeah.
Yay. That was what was really fun in the monastery project, and probably what tilled the soil that readied me for the next step, because I wasn't rigid in my commitment to being a Carmelite for the rest of my life. But when we give our all, and then we even take vows towards it, if we really give our all, we don't look back. And I didn't look back. Like my mind wouldn't have even ever thought about something else. Mm-hmm. I was so 100% in my yes. And part of the things that I love in the book, this one and then the third one that's written that'll come out, is it shows how our yeses in life open us up for life experience to work on us. and work on us in lots of really subtle ways. And one of the things that worked on me was that when I was experiencing spirit moving through me every time I spoke, and people then resting into their own joy and themselves and and stepping into their childlikeness and stepping into their miraculous part. It's that direct experience happening for 3 solid years, I believe really worked with me, worked with my mind and my heart, and probably tilled the soil that was part of the ingredient that led me to the light that came in that August evening. So, and it wasn't like a for or against, it wasn't conscious. And I think that some of our great learning can be when we realize that most of what's really influencing us is unconscious and is our unconscious response to it as well. And so that can then let us be a little bit lighter with how seriously we hold our conscious progress. No.
I like the double meaning going on here with the word light. So on the one hand, there's light as in visible light. And then on the other hand, there's light as in lightness.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Well, you're the one who said it. I mean, I was just taking what you said and distilling it. That's all I did. I mean, this is your words that I'm distilling, not mine.
Thank you. Thank you. But you said you liked that, so that was nice to hear.
I do. Yeah, I do like it. Yeah. Well, I like anything that uses language to help us refocus, because language is our primary form of intercommunication amongst each other. And so whenever we can use that language to, in some way, make it more interesting, more fun, more intriguing, such as, 2 meanings to a word, that kind of thing, that's useful. That's valuable stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's juicy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're all about the juice around here. True or false, Anne-Marie? True or false? So you've been going through a dark period, in a sense, not dark, but a lost period. And I like the way you describe that. One of the themes that has come up a lot on the show, and I'm going to kind of venture a guess that it's true in your case, although you may not know the answer to this because you're still in the middle of the journey. But one of the themes that comes up over and over again is how when people experience loss or trauma, dark nights of the soul, all kinds of terrible things that go on in their lives, they come through the other side stronger, more knowledgeable, more enlightened, whatever adjectives you want to put onto it, but they come out better at the other. And even though they would never want to go through it again, but they often describe it as the best thing that ever happened. Well, you're kind of not so much in the middle of it. You're kind of just starting to come out of it. What's your sense of what I was just talking about, where you've been going through it? I mean, are you feeling any of that? Do you still feel like you're still in the process of letting it take form and gain some understanding, or have you already been able to distill some understanding from it at this point?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I would say that this period, this cycle of destruction and loss, there has been an inner clarity along the way that there's something ordained about it. So there's a built-in consolation there. It doesn't necessarily lighten the sensory challenge, because in periods like that, you can really have I've had deep grief. I've had a lot of different emotions arise up. But there has been that's been clear along. And then one thing that I have noticed that I think is like a little gift of the beloved was my service in the world, even though it's been obviously mitigated due to circumstances. The level of sophistication and immediacy of how people are experiencing shifts within themselves has been reflecting to me that I too am becoming refined. I'm working with my gifts with people, and they're experiencing, I hate to put it this way, but like results faster, and not in the linear sense, but in that inner shifting coming into wholeness. People are moving through things radically more quickly. And the words that are coming out of my mouth, the quality of presence, are magnified. There's a way that what I am in my service part of me has really been amplifying and magnifying. So that tells me and confirms to me that I'm not completely delusional, that I'm not somehow, sabotaging things and part of the destruction and the loss, but that, it's really bearing fruit in unseen ways. So that's my take on it. Yeah. And then while it's uncomfortable for me, it's been even more comfortable for the people I serve.
Okay. And you used a phrase earlier, and you just used it again to remind me that it was something I wanted to ask you about. You said your way of thinking about, I think we were referencing source, was the beloved. Talk about that. Talk about where that comes from and what that means for you.
I would say it's a line of continuity from my earlier childhood experiences, that there was a tremendous relational quality in my healing and wholeness journey, and it still is. Meaning, I'll give the example that the mention of the leaf. So on an autumn day in Cincinnati, and I loved school. I was like this tremendous geek. One of my happiest things about school was getting my new pencils and cigar box and all my schedules and all my notebooks, and I was so jazzed, like over the moon. So, walking home from school was really awesome in autumn because it had just started. And autumn had the traditional characteristics to it. Change, a pickup of the wind, a slight chilling in the air, the turning of all the leaves and their color, the leaves falling. Everything felt really alive. And so I would usually dance my way home because I would feel the dance and I'd want to be a part of it as a little girl. And one time when I was dancing my way home, I was whirling like a Sufi, though I didn't know it. I mean, we were so Catholic that I knew about and nothing else but Catholicism. But I was whirling my way home, and I got to the edge of the cul-de-sac, and I just stopped and I was just taking it all in. I was so happy. Oh, I was so happy. I was just taking it everyone in around me. And then this tree across the cul-de-sac seemed to kind of reach out. It was like lit up, and it was like reached out and like pulled my attention. And then, so I was like that. Mm-hmm. And then a leaf on that tree did the same thing. So it was like zero in, zero in. And as I was there with the leaf wordlessly, it was going like this on the branch. It was so beautiful. And then it broke off the branch and started descending towards the ground. And in that descent, unsolicited by me, this existential anguish rose up from deep within me. Deep grief. It's like, and the words I could put to it was, is that it? Is that all life is about? Dying? And so here I was in this state of unsolicited anguish because this leaf apparently was dying. And the moment that rose up, it felt like Source, as a lover, stopped all time and didn't want me to suffer and pulled back these veils that led to an experience that the leaf was in God and God was in the leaf, and that there was no such thing as dying, that everything is being and becoming in this. So that has been largely my experience. And there's something really relational about that, because there's a felt sense that when something happens within me, some of my unconscious coming up, that something that's not just me seems to say, stop, my love. I don't want you to suffer. Look, this is what it really means. And so with that being part of my path and the construct, it's led me to talk about this consciousness as beloved, and not so much like I have, I used to have a construct around God and what a personal God was and that's really been blown wide open. And it's gone in a lot of ways. But that quality, that relational quality continues to be operative in my life. So it's most true for me. And I don't know that that's the way, that's everybody's way. I think the way is many and manifold. So in my service, I don't try to provide occasions for people to have that same experience that way, but I provide opportunities for them to experience themselves. And in that, there is a revelation that will always happen, that is some connectivity to what's uncreated.
Some connectivity to what's uncreated. So by uncreated, do you mean not yet created?
No, I would say like the source from which creation is coming and in which every creation is coming. Mm-hmm. Yeah, more of an ultimate reality of sorts.
Okay. Wow, you've really developed your mental understanding of your own belief system in tremendous detail.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I felt completely transfixed with that. It just makes me want to open my eyes a bit more to what's out there and the little bits of beauty, just the wind on your face, a leaf falling, and just noticing stuff rather than slowing down, not rushing.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for that. And
no, thank you.
Well, that's what's so interesting about this, isn't it? Because it's for everybody, it's a life of discovery. Different people are going to be discovering vastly different things depending on what is happening in their lives, what they perceive to be their paths, or maybe they don't even perceive a particular path. But whatever that experience is, they're going to be experiencing things in a wide variety of ways. So when we encounter somebody who's experienced it in a way that is clear to her and strong and definite, we gain our attention. That gets our attention. That makes us sit up and take notice. That's like, oh, this is somebody who's really figured a lot of it out for herself. It doesn't even matter whether it's the same answer for us. That's really not relevant. What's relevant is she's got it figured for herself. That's pretty good.
Yeah, thank you for that. And my hope is that it just provides the opportunity for each person to come into wholeness. And wholeness would be fully alive, right? Fully awake to what it means to be alive, fully available to their lives. Yeah.
You mentioned an event coming up this weekend. What's that about?
Oh, yes. So it's called Discovering Self Summit. And I have drawn together 10 other contributors who are really phenomenal. We have Lauren Roche, the author of Radiant Sutras, Karen Curry Parker, quantum human design expert, Jack O'Keefe, a spiritual leader, Phil Goldberg, author of American Vedas, Tej and Greet, who will be doing circle, relational spirituality through circle presencing. But each one of these, all 11 of us have developed systems and pathways that have led us into a rich experience of discovering ourselves. Mm-hmm. And everyone is going to share their methodology, their insights, experiences, and there'll be breakout sessions and group practices and recordings. You get the recordings for a lifetime. And I'm very, very humbled and proud at the same time of the quality of the summit that has come together.
Who do you think is an appropriate candidate to consider attending this summit?
So the invitation that I wrote up points to a number of different individuals that quote the same thing. If you want peace in the world, start with peace within yourself. So if it is an individual who is seeking and who is feeling that it's imperative, that it's important to develop an ability to be peaceful, to live a peaceful life, to discover joy, to discover clarity in their lives, all of these things that hinge upon the deepest desires that I think we have. If you're an individual that's alive for you right now, whether you feel confident or not confident at all, you're a right candidate for the summit, because it's going to be a very tender, like-hearted place where you can explore it.
Sounds cool. So how do they find out about the summit? How do they find out more about you? How do they reach out to you? I mean, I presume you want people to reach out to you. How do they find you?
Yeah, thank you. Yes. So if you're listening and you want to be connected to me, then just know, I know there's something in me that wants to be connected to you. And my website, KimberlyBraun.com, you will find there ways to attend the summit, buy a book or a CD, attend a retreat, register for an online course, book a private session, bring me to your area and get in contact with me, and even do something as small as join a newsletter if it's a stepping stone that you want to do. So KimberlyBraun.com has all of that. It's all active and up to date. I have more than 600 videos, so you can always just enjoy jumping on and enjoy a video. And what's cool is I did a TED Talk about So Miracles in the Naked Light, the book. My TED Talk is that in seed form. So if you're really kind of curious about that monastery project and what the deeper takeaways are, at least for me, watch the TED Talk. It's right on my homepage.
Cool.
Perfect.
I love it. Cool. Really cool stuff. I like that. Anne-Marie, I always like to come to you to give us your take on how you summarize everything. What your biggest takeaway is. Have you figured out what it is for Kimberly and for this show?
It's just what a wonderful way to start the year. Just beautiful. I think my takeaway from this it's going back to that childlike perspective. Just seeing the beauty, being free. I love the fact that Kimberly says life is simple. We make it difficult. We don't need to. And yeah, so I think that's given me a lot of things to think about.
Yeah, we're good at complexity, aren't we?
Yeah.
We have a lot of practice with complexity. I mean, we're experts at complexity.
And do you know what? I'm done with it.
I love it. That's so true. We're silly. We're just like silly, right?
Well, it's part of the fun of being on that path. Even if it's your own individual path, different from everyone else, you still get to be silly on your own path if you want to be, and that's a good thing.
Yes. Yeah, it's so true.
Well, Kimberly, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your story, or stories, I should say, because there are a number of tales woven together there. And I've been sitting here asking myself, how can I say this next part? Because I'm looking for the right phrasing, but thank you for your, what's the word I want to use? Attitude doesn't quite say it. Your take, your approach to your life. What's that? Perspective, yeah. But there is an expression of your life force that comes through when you talk. And that's the part that I'm trying to find a label for, and I'm failing utterly to come up with it. And Amber, you know I'm really good at coming up with stuff. I can't find a way to
you're never
describe
stumped.
it. Yeah. But there's a quality to the way that you express yourself that instantly helps anybody listening get a grasp on what your spirit is like, what your spiritual journey is like, what your essence is like.
I would say it would be your beautiful aura.
Okay, yeah.
Wow,
because it feels it. I can just feel it.
Well, I'm giving you a big old hug because you're on the East Coast, right, Walt? And then you're Anne-Marie, you're over the pond.
I'm over the pond.
Yeah, it's been just such an honor to be with you for New Year's Day. What a great way to bring in the new year, right? To have engagement that we can uplift each other. I really appreciate both of you.
Well, it's a reminder that this is the first day of a new set of opportunities. That's what a new year is.
Yeah.
All kinds of new opportunities coming our way, and this is the very first day of it.
Yeah.
So Thank you for helping us to recognize that fact. Great stuff. And thank you, Anne-Marie. I'm hoping that you continue to heal and get better and launch into this new year flying. We don't want you crawling out of bed. We want you flying. Okay. So make sure you're staying on that. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.